All right, welcome everyone to this Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee for this term of council. Just a quick reminder on some key points. The City of Kitchener has aligned with provincial changes to COVID-19 restrictions, and City Hall is now open for in-person services, but appointments are still being encouraged. The city remains committed to safety of our patrons and staff and continue to facilitate electronic meeting participation by members of the public. Those people interested in participating in future meetings can register to participate electronically by completing the online delegation registration form at www.kitchener.ca/delegation or via email at delegation@kitchener.ca. For those who are interested in accessing the meeting live stream video, it's available at www.kitchener.ca/watchnow. I'm just going to make this statement at a time rather than for each item, just as a reminder for the delegations that, again, a reminder to all delegations of some guidelines for participation. All right. The clerks doesn't like this new chair. I guess I have no idea they're cutting me off already. All right. I would like to remind all the delegations of some guidelines for participation. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in immediate removal from the meeting: interrupting councillor, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, turning your camera on at an inappropriate time, and hate speech or defamatory comments. One last reminder for delegations: please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community members. All right. With that, any pecuniary interest, conflict of interest to declaration? No. There's no. Yes, of course. You just key in. Councillor Clancy?
I have a conflict of interest at the Sports World location.
Okay, all right, as noted. So when we come to that, I'll just take that vote separately, and you will press the conflict button when the vote is taken.
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, sorry, just you have to declare the nature of the conflict, and also a reminder, this is for everyone's benefit. There's paperwork you have to fill out with clerks.
Yes. Go ahead, Councillor Clancy.
My parents own a property in a close proximity to that development.
All right, good. And again, if you just fill out the appropriate form to the clerk, that should be the yellow form. It'll be given to you shortly. Thank you. All right, with that, we'll lead into the delegations and discussion items. So we'll start off with item number 6.1, zoning bylaw amendment for 1257-1265 Ottawa Street South. And this is a staff report DSD-2022-461 and DSD 2022-461 again. There's a first presentation by Eric Schneider, our planning staff. Mr. Schneider, when you're ready, please proceed. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, Mayor, and members of Council. My name is Eric Schneider, and I'm a senior planner at the City. I'm here today to make a recommendation for approval of a zoning bylaw amendment to facilitate the development of a 20-unit multi-residential building. As we move to the next slide, I will discuss the site context of the overall neighborhood. The subject property is located in the Laurentians Hill neighborhood, near the major regional intersection of Fisher-Hellman Road and Ottawa Street South. Entrance and exit ramps to the Conestoga Parkway are nearby on Fisher-Hellman. Existing community amenities include Laurentian Public School and Laurentian Park, Windale Park, and the Sunrise Shopping Center. On the next slide, you can see a closer neighborhood context here. The subject site currently contains 2 single detached dwellings. Each neighboring property on Ottawa Street is a semi-detached dwelling, and across Ottawa Street is a 29-unit townhouse dwelling and place of worship. On the next slide, I will discuss the proposed concept. The site is proposed to be developed with a 3-story building containing 20 units. Surface parking for 23 vehicles is to be provided on site along with walkways, landscaped areas, and an outdoor at-grade amenity area. Balconies are proposed to face Ottawa Street and the rear of the site. The next slide contains the proposed zoning map showing the subject lands as Area 1. As we move to the next slide, I will speak briefly about the current opportunity with this application. The opportunity to create 20 new dwelling units, creating them on an existing site for the opportunity for gentle infill development within a neighborhood with adequate municipal services, to contribute to the diversity of housing within the neighborhood by providing multiple dwellings in a low-rise setting. Moving now to the next slide, I will summarize the details of the zoning bylaw amendment request. To change the zoning to Res 5 to allow the use of multiple dwellings on the land. To permit a floor space ratio of 0.63, whereas 0.6 is the maximum in the Res 5 zone. And to establish a parking rate of 1.15 spaces per dwelling unit, which works out to 23 parking spaces. In summary, the proposed application represents good planning principles and is consistent with provincial, regional, and the city's planning policies. That concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. I think it's usually protocol that we wait on questions of staff up until all the delegations are heard, and that way, depending on what the delegation has said, if there's more clarity that's required, that way, when later time, you can ask that clarification from staff as part of your additional questions that you may have of staff as well. All right, so we will lead to the delegations, and the first is, I believe, on behalf of the proponent, which it would be Mr. Scott Patterson, LP Plan, and it's a virtual meeting, so. Mr. Patterson, are you there? All right. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Singh, members of committee. My name is Scott Patterson with Patterson Planning Consultants, here today on behalf of the property owner. As noted by Mr. Schneider, the proposal before you is for a 20-unit multiple residential dwelling project. It conforms to the official plan of the City of Kitchener. The Res 5 zoning that would be implemented supports the project with the modest increase in floor space ratio to 0.63. We are meeting bylaw regulations and requirements for parking. We do provide on-site amenity area. And I'm basically here in support of the staff report and recommendation today. If there's any questions from committee, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, hi, thank you for presenting. Will these units be owned or rented?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my experience has shown that these types of projects have typically gone through a condominium process at the start to avoid conversion policies later on. But at this time, it has not been determined whether they will be rental or freehold tenant.
Okay. I noticed in some of the comments that there were concerns with the flooding and the rainwater runoff. Has that been addressed, or how will you be addressing it?
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, stormwater management would be addressed through the site plan approval process. So as part of that process, a detailed site grading and servicing drawing and stormwater management report will be prepared and submitted to the city and the region. And that would address stormwater management and grading for the property to ensure that rainwater has been addressed accordingly.
Okay. Another question I had was regarding EV chargers. Will they be available at each of the parking spots, the 23 surface parking spots?
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe charging stations are required for all of the parking spaces, but there is an intent to include them for the required number as per the bylaw or for the building code.
Okay, I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
All right, any of the other committee members have questions? No, in that case, I have a couple of my own. So with this development, it's on a major node, which does have considerable traffic volumes. What type of concern or mitigation efforts were made? Again, you're representing the applicant to address the turning radiuses and, more importantly, coming onto traffic on Ottawa Street with the expected occupancy and visitors to the new development.
Thank you for the question. As noted, the project will conform to the parking requirements of the City of Kitchener, the new zoning bylaw requirements. As part of the materials submitted to the city for review, we had submitted a truck turning movement plan that showed the garbage vehicle coming into the site, accessing the garbage location, and then leaving in a forward motion. So it is our expectation that all vehicles, both emergency and service, that enter this site would be able to egress from the property in a forward motion, and that would apply to all visitors and residents as well. To try and minimize traffic movement from the site, bicycle parking is being provided in accordance with City of Kitchener standards. So there would be 6 on-site bicycle spaces in a rack, an outdoor rack, and there would be 10 locker facilities provided on site for secure bicycle storage for the residents themselves, all of which is in accordance with the City of Kitchener zoning bylaw requirements.
Okay, again, this is a application that's being supported by staff, and what I'm sure the rationale is, again, it's encouraged to see soft intensification in built-up areas. But when we have that, to make sure that we are the development is not impeding or affecting too much on the lives of the existing residents in that neighborhood, is to make sure that you have the right type of site plan mitigating measures. So one of them is fencing. So I realize that this would be addressed at a later time, but I want to hear from you because you're acting here on behalf of the applicant. What type of fencing is being proposed on the site?
A wooden board-on-board fence is proposed along the common property lines with the abutting properties. That fence would be provided in accordance with the current city standard. There is an opportunity through the bylaw or through the site plan process to allow for an increased height in the fence, and that would be discussed further with staff at that time. But it is our intent to provide a privacy fence around those common property lines as well as any landscaping required through the site plan approval process.
Is that 6 feet or the 8 feet? That's 8 feet is a maximum.
I believe the standard is a 6-foot board-on-board privacy fence. There is an opportunity to increase to 8 feet, from my understanding, through the site plan process without going through a fence bylaw, minor variance, or a variance to the fence bylaw. So
Would you have an ability to commit to 8 feet as opposed to the 6 feet?
if that's the direction of council or committee, that's something I believe my client is readily willing to accept, yes.
Okay, I have other questions, but I see Councillor Deneau has keyed in, and I want to give him an opportunity, and then I can come back as the chair afterwards. Thank you. Councillor Deneau?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I saw one of the concerns from the residents about parking, and they had indicated that there's just going to be 1 parking spot per unit. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. There's 23 parking spaces proposed on the site plan, the current site plan.
Okay, and I'm not sure, I know where the area is, but I'm not sure what the side streets are like. So what impact would that have for the current residents as far as two-car household or visitors? I'm just curious what the traffic and what the parking situation is going to be like when all those units are in there.
Through your chair, Singh, the intent is there would be no parking off-site. The 1 space per unit is the current City of Kitchener zoning bylaw requirement, the new zoning bylaw. There's also a requirement to provide 0.15 spaces per unit for visitor parking. So the total requirement for the 20-unit development project is 23 spaces, and that's what's being provided on site. That is in accordance with bylaw requirements and has been based on the studies and analysis done by your traffic division to be an appropriate amount for a project such as this.
Okay, so overflow parking, that will go on the street then if there's not enough visitor spots. I'm just thinking of, I have 2 cars in my household, and you're only providing one spot for 1 car per household, and maybe they have 2 or 3 cars in the household. So how do we address that situation without creating a jam of sorts on the side streets? Because that's probably bound to happen. You have to have somewhere to park your car, right?
Right. Again, through your chair, saying whether this is condo or if it goes condo, the intent would be that the parking would be unbundled. So essentially, it would not be tied to the individual residences or individual units. That would allow flexibility for any resident who had more than 1 vehicle to potentially secure another parking space from a resident who may not have a car or may not need a parking space. If it remains as just a rental project, a similar fashion could ensue where a resident that may have 2 vehicles could secure another parking space, whereas there may be residents in the projects who do not have parking requirements, and there may be surplus parking as a result of that. So again, I believe the intent or the hope is that all parking can be provided on site. If there is overflow parking situation, then yes, naturally, they'd have to secure parking in a legal parking space on the side street or some other location. And then make their way back to the property or find parking accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
All right, just a couple more questions, then I'll go on to the other delegations. Mr. Patterson, relief is being asked through site-specific zone change from 0.6 density to 0.63, I believe. How many units extra is that accommodating to ask for that extra density?
The simple answer is I don't believe it's accommodating any additional units. Floor space ratio reflects the massing of the building. So it's the total volume of the building above grade. The increase is from 0.6 to 0.63. So it's an increase in overall building area, but I don't believe it can be attributed to an actual increase in the number of units.
Okay, so it's just essentially the units would have been smaller if that relief was not provided.
That's correct.
And what's the complement of the units? They're 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, they're family-size units, or they're more starter home type of complement?
Through you, Chair Singh, there is a mix of units. There is 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units being provided. They're distributed throughout the building. So yes, there is a mix of units on site.
Okay, and again, at this point, council has an opportunity through the zone change to ask questions or make any effective change. At a later point, site plan will really direct how that development will look like. Will it stay quite consistent to what was presented through the application?
Yes, the expectation would be that if council or committee were to support this project, it's my understanding that staff would look to implement the concept plans that are presented to you. The intent or the vision is to implement the project that's been presented to yourselves and the public with no dramatic deviation from the project as presented.
Councilor Clancy.
I just wanted to comment on some of the concerns of the neighboring residents.
Councilor Clancy, if, no, you keep it on, please. Just if it's a comment,
Okay.
you probably want to retain those comments for later on overall. But if you have a question to Mr. Patterson, that would be probably most advisable right now.
Sure. At the site plan, will you consider a higher fence? I believe it's a 6-foot fence, and there's some concerns about privacy.
Through you, Chair Singh, as previously noted, we are open to that opportunity or that option. If that is a direction from committee or from staff, I believe there is an option to go to an 8-foot fence, and we would consider that and implement that through the approvals process.
And the only other question is, will you follow an arborist report? I believe there's a mature tree that could be protected when developing the building. Is that correct?
Yes, through you, Chair Singh, a tree management plan was prepared and submitted as part of the application. That tree management plan will also be utilized if council were to support this and it was to go through for full site plan approval. Tree management plans are typically used and followed, and any effort to maintain and protect trees would be accommodated through the site plan approval process. That's correct.
Thank you.
All right, well, Mr. Patterson, that's all the questions from the committee, so thank you. All right, we'll go on to, this is in person for Rock Can. Yes, sir. Mr. Can, you have 5 minutes to make your delegation, so whenever you're ready, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for having us. A few things that I want to talk to you all about is I want to tell you all that there was a petition in the neighborhood, basically the whole block that this unit is apparently going into. There was basically the whole block signed a petition saying we do not want this building here. That was not on the record. It was only the first page of the appeal. So of the 240-meter radius that you sent out, which is probably 50, 60 residents, there was over 60% that does not want this building the way it is in this location. So further than that, I wanted to say that a lot of people didn't show up to these meetings because, it's 3 in the afternoon, a lot of people are working, and virtually there's a lot of elderly live in our neighborhood, so obviously that's why they're not here. As about my other comment about the gentle intensification that Mr. Schneider was talking about is going from R2 to a Res 2 to a Res 5 is not gentle by any means. And they're also asking for a special provision for multiple dwelling. Not like the Res 5 that's been approved in council does not allow for multiple. They're asking for a special provision for that, as well as a floor space ratio increase of 0.3. Of the 20 parking spaces that they're saying it's provided per unit, one of them is a handicap spot, or better rephrase, accessibility. So it's not actually 20 full parking spots per unit. And if anybody knows that neighborhood well, all the side streets are full every night because of the townhouse units across the road and the ones off Williamsburg. So there's definitely not enough street parking as it is, and I don't even know what's going to happen in the winter months. So the other thing that I want to make a comment was, I just found it inaccurate. Like, I don't feel that this building, besides being having the intensification, is actually bringing anything for the neighborhood. Like, this isn't a sustainability project. This isn't an affordable housing project, and it's definitely not in the MTSA that the city of Kitchener is trying to get into. Like, it's not anywhere near the region. There's a lack of transit. This is a car neighborhood. Like, there's one bus route that basically runs around Fisher Holman in Ottawa. So when they're trying to pitch, telling me, okay, well, we want this, and that. Well, it's not that I'm not for intensification, but going from a Res 2 to a Res 5 is pretty substantial. And just to quote the staff comments, he mentioned that this was a very comparable or similar site to the 29-unit townhome complex that's across the road from this. Well, that site is 2.5 times at least larger than this site. And not only that, that's only as in the old system is only a R4. So how are they if that's comparable, why are we going to Res 5, which is much more substantial than going from an instead of saying comparable and getting an R4 rating? Like, I understand the developers are trying to maximize their profits, but for us as residents, this is definitely not something that we're looking for on this location. And everybody knows the traffic on Ottawa Street coming in and out with one driveway, especially during rush hour, is terrible. So unless they come with a much better traffic plan, I honestly can't see how any of us would be supporting this as residents. Like, obviously you guys know better, right? So in conclusion, I'd like to say, I personally don't feel like anybody adjacent to this property actually would support this. And not, like, I would like to see maybe if they want to increase the intensification, that they would be looking towards affordable housing or a more sustainable path as opposed to, and at least some kind of tree planting, some kind of parks dedication. Like, there's nothing. Like, they basically bombard you a bunch of information that at the end of the day, it's just, okay, well, this is why it fits into R5. Okay, well, that's great, but this isn't an R5 property to begin with. So, anyways, thank you for your time.
There might be questions, so just bear with me. And I appreciate that, this is really close to heart subject matter for some of you. Those are going to be affected by this development, but we don't have any applauses or any commentary from the background while delegation is presenting. So if you can just refrain, I would appreciate that. I feel you, but if you could, just for the decorum of the meeting. Mr. Cam, there's a question from Councillor Deneau. Just bear with me.
Thank you, Chair. So the side street, is that 9 Pines?
So there's, so in that block is basically surrounded by 9 Pines and Williamsburg. So on the east side of Williamsburg, there's already, as you can see, there's a 5-building or 6-building complex. If you look on the overall map, it's only single parking on the one side street. And that street, basically from Otto Street almost all the way to Wilkins, it's full every single night.
And there's no sidewalks on that?
There is a sidewalk on that street, but on 9 Pines there isn't. But that street is noted to be full all the time as well. So because of it, like I said, one parking spot in the neighborhood where it doesn't matter if both parties are working. 9 times out of 10, you have 2 vehicles, right? So if you're telling me, okay, this downtown Kitchener, you want to support lesser parking, I'm probably okay with it because you have transit options, but you have one bus line on Ottawa Street, like It's not exactly, the traffic hub either. And I don't know, like, is there plans for extensions in, like, for the LTR going on, that's going to extend that way? I don't know, right?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Cam, there's no one else, but I have a few questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Mr. Cam, sorry. So you've addressed the fact that parking is a primary concern of yours.
Yes.
Now, currently, it's a R4, which I think under the...
Well, currently it's an R2 actually. It's just, I'm just mentioning the complex that they referred to across the road is an R4 complex for the townhomes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
We'll just get a clarity from staff later, just to understand the current zoning and the proposed zoning difference. With the parking concern, and you articulated well that there's already kind of compression of parking because of the townhouse complex that's there already. If increased parking accommodation were made, do you think then this would be a suitable development site in that case for what's being proposed?
Well, it depends what you're talking about, increased parking, right? Like, it depends what they're going to come up with before what, like, I can't speak on something that I don't know, I can't make assumptions, what you mean by assumed parking, because honestly, Ottawa is a big street. So I can already see, probably people aren't even going to, because of the traffic in and out of Ottawa Street is very difficult as it is, trying to, back in or drive out of Ottawa Street. They would, like your Uber guys, your delivery guys are probably going to park on the side of the road on Ottawa Street, run in, do their deliveries and come out. So that's already foreseen. Like, it's not like everybody knows if you're on downtown Kitchener, your delivery drivers are not going to drive to your visitors parking. They're just going to stand on the road, run in, do the deliveries, come out. So unless you guys want more traffic issues on a busy street like that,
No, Mr. Khan, what I was trying to address is, we're trying to mitigate, right?
Yeah.
We have an application before us that's staff supported. And what I was trying to address from you is, if parking was one factor that was addressed, would that make you more satisfied?
It would be more, I'd be more susceptible to it for sure, but.
And the other thing is with the privacy you mentioned.
Yes.
Would a 8 fence and of course with a appropriate tree management plan, which would perhaps...
Well, and like I said, I prefer for a project of this size, I personally would like to see at least some sign of sustainable elements in that, which I would think the council would support as well, considering, we're supposed to be, by 2030, we're supposed to be carbon, net zero. So this building, if they're going to be building for the future, this building's for stay. At least make them net zero ready or whatever. Like at least have some kind of sustainability components in there, because I don't see any. There's no pitch for it. They just want to build this thing. It's not affordable, so it's not sustainable. Like, they got to do something, right?
Okay, all right, well, that's some of the questions that we will try to address and ask staff, and see where we have an avenue to address that as well.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Appreciate it. Next up, we have, it's in person as well, it's Carlos Mazzarella. And I believe there's a PowerPoint also?
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
So just for the record, he's the ringer, and he stole a lot of my material.
That's all right.
So see what's going on there. So basically, the pattern that I see is of this: like you have a design, and it's supposed to look like and solve everything, and then you actually have the user experience, which is what happens after the design. And I'm going to come back to that diagram over and over to make the point. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of talk about the garbage and about silos. This picture, by the way, all the pictures that I'm providing here were taken last week. So this little thing is located a block away from us, and it's basically what they're proposing to have in there to collect the garbage from 20 units. As you can see it there, design was meant to solve the problem, user experience is a mess. And if my camera could capture the stink of it, you would understand better. But just take a look at that. I've been walking by that for the past 9 years, and it's been like that or worse every day. And I walk by it because I walk my dog. So next slide, please. So this is basically to give you an idea. What I like to spend a lot of the time remaining is basically to go over what is in Nine Pines Road. Like, there's a lot of talk about the neighborhood, and there's this complex over there, there's complex over here, there's all of this, regulations and so forth. What's missing is basically for you to walk over the Nine Pines Street, see what's currently there, and then think to yourself, does it fit to put a 20-unit apartment building in the middle of that street? Because it's like right there, the site, as you can see, is like the two houses, and it's like a massive amount of greenery, right? It's like there's 26 trees in there, and from their proposal, they're not saving any single one of them. They're planning on saving the 1 or 2 trees that are located on adjacent properties. They're going to make sure that they don't kill it. That's exactly what's going on. And the biggest of three there is, it's kind of like, it reminds me of Avatar or, Yosemite Park. It's as wide as a car, and it has like 10 chutes coming out of it. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I was just not able to capture on film, because film doesn't do justice, because you go far back and you look at it, it's like a tiny little tree, but it's actually an enormous tree. And the amount of CO2 that thing is taking care of is just like it's insane. And to be honest, you're going to replace all that by a parking lot, by concrete parking lot, all of that greenery, and all of our backyards are shared. So what I like to do for the remaining of the thing is to walk over Nine Pines, and I'm only going to show you all the houses that are directly adjacent to this property. Directly adjacent, directly affected by this. So next slide, next slide, please. That's the first house as you walk down Nine Pines. As you can see, it's a reasonably large house. Has a brand new roof. 16 windows have been replaced this year. Next slide, please. This is the second house adjacent to that house. Now ask yourself, do you see between these two houses a 20-unit building being placed? Is this the type of street that kind of development should be put on? The city planner guys are going to point out and say, hey, but there's a multi-dwelling unit over there, there's a multi-dwelling unit over there, there's all of these things going on, but not one single time they look at it and say, hey, this is the quality of the Nine Pines Road neighborhood. Do we want to preserve that or not? Is it okay to put it there or not? Next slide, please. This is another house just around the corner. Should we put the 10-unit beside that one and the previous one? Next one, please. So that's basically the front of their house. I just turned the corner on Nine Pines, and that. Next one, please. So that's a very small house. I just want to make the point on that one is that there were 29 pages filed against the, comments from the city. The 29 pages, 28 pages were against it. 1 page was for it, and I'm going to read the comment that they made it. We should not have expensive and large footprint single dwellings on Ottawa Street. It's just too busy of a street. Their house was there when there was nothing around. That's the original house when there was a farm. And now you're claiming, now you don't want any large houses on the neighborhood. Just obey all of the previous houses that were there. They were there before all of this. Like I said, this is a street with huge houses, but he has a little one, which is the original owner of the property, of the whole farm. Next slide, please. Ten seconds plus on there. 10 more seconds. I'm counting the time. Next. Oh yeah. Okay. Next. Sorry. Yeah. So that's Brian's house there, and I ask yourself, like, this is directly behind it. Next one. Also directly behind it. Would it be okay to just flip the current one back to this too? Instead of destroying the 2 houses on the other side, we destroy these 2 houses. Would it be better? Would it be safer? And I'm running out of time. Just to tell. Last night there was a huge accident right in front of this proposal, and I kid you not, I asked you to check with the police. I happened to have walked by it, and it was it was horrendous, okay? It was a head-on collision that massively took the left side of the car out, and that just happened yesterday. And I ask yourself, you're trying to put 23 cars into there, and they're getting in and out of there with a 1-lane driveway. It's a 1-lane driveway. When somebody's getting out of there trying to make a left, it's going to block all the traffic because the guy's rush hour, 23 cars, 10 probably left, 10 are trying to come in or already came in.
Start wrapping up. I'll give you a minute. But
So that's pretty much it. It's like, how wise is that to have that? I mean, the accident happened last night, and it's going to be again and again and again. Next slide, please. Just to put the reasons. I just have a summary at the end.
Yes, if you could just speed up with it.
Yeah, it's done. It's done. It's basically saying these are the reasons why this is not appropriate, and I think it's on the. I just leave it there, but it's basically their whole block has mostly R2 houses of the quality that I just showed you, and there's a couple of R4s, and now you want to convert all of this into a big apartment building, and it's just not the right spot for it. Thank you.
Okay, Carlos, there are questions from the committee? It's okay. Councilor Ioannidis?
Thank you, Chair Singh. And Carlos, the one picture that you showed with the garbage, have you ever called in bylaw to complain about that?
I don't live there. I walk by it.
But you're referencing it here as something, so why haven't you been proactive in
The delegation is giving an example.
Yeah, because I'm sure somebody else has, because the people that live around there, and like I said, this is not a short-term thing. This has been going on for years. So I'm sure that people have complained, and nothing has been done. I was going to put another image on my presentation, which is the image of Not My Job. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that concept, Not My Job. It's a picture of somebody painting the road, and it is a dead animal, and the guy just painted on top of it. Basically saying, it's not my job, I'm not supposed to pick up the animal, I'm just going to paint, I'm a painter. So that's my take on that one.
Okay. The other question I have is, you're saying that there's no, parking and all that stuff. Where exactly are the townhouse folks parking?
Which townhouse folks?
The ones that are parking on your street?
I think.
They're from
Williamsburg, the townhouse complex.
Yeah, they're from the Williamsburg townhouse complex,
So
on the other side of the street.
Are they parking on your street?
They're parking, yeah.
Okay.
Well, usually they park it, but like you said, the neighbors complain it, the city bylaw you're allowed to park over 3 hours. So they start getting tickets, and then it solves the problem, right?
Okay. Have you driven around the city at all to see other areas that have this similar situation as what is being proposed here?
No, I don't know, I'm not aware of.
Because I can assure you, it's all over the city. This was not a unique situation. In fact, I have several in the area I represent.
Well, I'm here speaking about my situation, right?
Okay. Well, I just wanted to let you know that this is not unique.
Fantastic.
Okay.
more people to line up behind us here and do the silent applaud, right?
Okay, there are no other questions for you. Carlos, thank you so much for presenting and giving your perspective. We'll carry on. Jennifer Woods. Welcome, Jennifer. You have 5 minutes.
Hello. I currently live at 1265 Ottawa Street South, so the development would be disastrous for me. I currently receive monies through Ontario Disability Support Program. I only receive $1,265 a month. My rent currently is $750, which I'll never be able to find again, and that's for a bachelorette apartment. Waterloo Region is rated number 7 in Canada to find a bachelor or one-bedroom apartment. A one-bedroom basement apartment is like $18.99 right now. I cannot afford that, and the possibility of homelessness is a real threat for me. I do not have a car and have post-traumatic stress disorder from a city bus accident. There are many grocery stores within walking distance, so it makes it convenient for me. Renting a room is not an option for me because of my mental illnesses. Renting a room would cause me to be anxious, have panic attacks, suicidal thoughts, severe depressions with health and safety concerns. For people that experience trauma, feeling physically safe is paramount to ongoing healing, as well as in discussion of the driveway. So if you look right across is Valley View, and I currently live at 1265. So when I'm coming to turn into my driveway and somebody else is trying to get into Valley View, we're blocking. So I either have to move back trying to pull into the driveway or somebody from Valley View. So I don't understand how 20 units could go in there when the 3 cars in my driveway can't get out. And as well as Valley View is right across the street from me, and there isn't parking on that street. And it's definitely ticketed, and I know because I used to live on Valley View. But for me, the problem is affordable housing. So right now, it is not only me, there's a few people in my unit that are where I reside, that are either on ODSP or OW. So what are the options for us? There's no affordable housing around. And like I said, for my mental health, I cannot rent a room. Like, this is serious. Like, you know, everybody's talking about the planning. What about the people that live there? What are they gonna do? Even too, like the beautiful trees around there. The trees there, the lady that used to live beside me, her and her husband planted them. They're like 60 years old. So I don't know what the proposal is, but please consider the people that can't afford to move. Thank you.
Jennifer, just for clarification, because you specified most of it, the affordability cost and what it would mean for you to move elsewhere, are you saying that if this development were to go through, that you wouldn't want to live there anymore, and that's why you would have to move somewhere else? Is that?
I wouldn't be able to afford to live there. I receive $1,265 a month from Ontario Disability Support Program.
Okay. All right.
I'm on disability because of my mental illness.
Okay, I just wanted clarification on that. Thank you. Councillor Chapman has a question for you, if you can bear with. Oh, I'm so sorry. Councillor Michaud, just getting used to the whole hybrid meeting, so I saw you waving afterwards. Councillor Michaud, you go ahead first.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm having a little trouble hearing the delegate, so I just want some clarification with this last delegate. Where in relation does this delegate live to where the development is going to be? Like, is this person going to be evicted from where she lives?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Because they're building, they're going to tear down the building you're living in?
Yes.
Is that?
My house, where I currently live, and the one next door, which was one of the original houses. I said it was a sweet German lady.
And how many people does this affect then?
Okay, so in my house, there's actually like 6 units in like a ranch style house. So right? There's 7 people there, and then next door is a bunch of students from India renting, and there's about 5 of them that live in the house next door. And I spoke with them as well. They won't be able to afford housing. And then, like I said, with Kitchener-Waterloo being number 7 out of all of Canada in our housing crisis, like, how is anybody supposed to afford stuff?
How long have you lived there?
4 years.
4 years. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Councillor Chapman, go ahead.
Yeah, my question was along the same lines. I was curious to know, I was curious to know how many people were being evicted, and has the owner of the properties, or the developer, I presume owns it now, have they offered you any alternative living arrangements?
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. No.
Okay, so there's been no discussion of that sort?
No, not at all.
Right. And, okay, thank you.
All right. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for your presentations, Jennifer. Often we look at the financial aspects of development, and we look at, environmental aspects of development, but quite often we don't see or hear the human side to development. And so thank you for your presentation. Just a quick question. Of the 6 units that are where you currently reside, are they all the same price units?
No,
Okay.
we're all different prices. Like, at the top, there's 2 walk-ins, and they share a kitchen. Now, beside me, there's 2 walk-ins. It's all kind of patio doors in the basement.
Okay.
And beside me, there's 2 rooms, and they share a kitchen. And I just have a little bachelorette. But I think upstairs, the main apartment, I think she pays like $1,200 to $1,500. And then I know beside me, I think they pay $700 each. And then upstairs as well, I think they're about $700 each.
And yours was,
Mine's $750. Also, we're very lucky though, because it's cable,
Yeah.
internet included, and heat and hydro.
Okay, thank you.
Any other?
All right, that's the question of the committee. I have a couple. Thank you, Jennifer. Similar to what Councillor Deneau said, hearing a personal perspective obviously helps as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I know some of that was probably sensitive for you to share, but we appreciate that context. What kind of notice were you given as a part of this development application, or not?
None yet. I had just spoken with Eric. He has been helpful in letting me know what's going on, but with my landlord, no.
Okay, so this is, the first you heard of this was through, I guess, a notice that you received in the mail as part of the development?
No, there was only one notice sent, so it was the sign in front on the development. And also, to go back to the driveway, if you're going to put in 20 units, you're going to have to put lights there, because you cannot get into the driveway going on Valley View or trying to get into my driveway, or even trying to reverse out on the road. So I would say if you're going to put that in, you're going to need a 3-way stop or something there.
Okay, we'll try to get some clarification from staff on that as well, so thank you for bringing that up. All right, Councillor Clancy, you have a question.
I think that what you're raising brings up a broader issue as we develop and intensify in neighborhoods, is the displacement of folks who are on a fixed income. So I think maybe as a council, this is something we need to dive deeper into, because we know we have an increasing homelessness population, and underhousing is a common concern. I also wanted to just share, I don't mean to intervene, but I hope that you'll be able, if you'd like to speak to our group, there are some supports in our city for folks who are at risk of eviction. So I did want to make sure that you get the support you need to advocate for yourself. I appreciate you advocating today in this way, but I also want you to know that there are some services available, and to seek us out if you want to get connected.
Thank you. I have been to a few services before here in Kitchener-Waterloo, but like I said, it would be detrimental to me to rent a room. And when I went into Lutherwood Housing and said, this is how much money I have, they said, rent a room. That was it. So, I mean, or get a roommate. I have been living on my own for my mental health, okay, and for me to be happy and to be stable. So the unknown is terrifying for me right now. So,
Okay.
that's good. Okay, thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. We appreciate that very much. Next up is Brian Shivers in person. Welcome, Brian, and I usually just repeat myself. It's 5 minutes for the delegation. Thank you.
I probably won't take that long.
That's okay.
Basically, I'm here to base on my engineering background, let's put it that way, that there's a lot being left wanting with this program. Simple one. Somebody pulling into the parking lot of this proposed building and wanting to park on the left side, they can't turn around and park there. They would park straight in. Now, to get out, they have to back out onto Ottawa Street. That's just one parking spot. If half the people that live in this place have more than one car, they'll be parking down my street. You can only park on my street on one side. And it's already used up most of the other side of the street. My house is directly behind this building that they want to put in. So basically, they want to build a parking lot in my backyard. And it just does not go. It does not work. I bought that house 25 years ago. I've lived there 25 years. And now they are going to change my whole backyard by putting in a parking lot. And 3 floors of windows looking down into my yard, because they're going to take all the trees out. Right now in the summertime, I use my backyard as my rec room. And I can't see the houses behind me because of the trees. They're going to remove them all. I'm going to have a bare building back there looking down into my house. I guess I've bitched enough. Sorry.
No, we appreciate that.
I'm done. I'll let it go at that.
Any questions? Okay, so Brian, of course, we're going to try to clarify some of the questions and concerns raised by the delegations with staff as well. Understanding, the kind of the process with this, we are driven by provincial policies for growth and all of that. That aside, we'll get into that. If the development had to proceed here, I asked this from a previous delegation because you are, in the rear, so you're affected most by it. Would a higher fence or a tree management plan, which would not immediately give you the benefit, but over time those trees would grow as well, would that soften some of your concern?
The higher fence would only accommodate hiding the headlights of the vehicles from my yard. I'd still have 3 floors of building looking down into my backyard.
Okay, I appreciate that.
The fence doesn't solve a lot.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
She's my neighbor.
All right, next up we have is John Mickle, and that is virtual. John, sorry, I'm going to look for assistance from the clerk. Okay, so they're not in the lobby? They're not online? Okay. Then we'll, if you can keep an eye out in case they join afterwards so that we can still hopefully include them. Otherwise, I'll go for the next registered delegation. It's Nancy Dean. welcome Nancy. Again, you have 5 minutes to make your presentation whenever you're ready.
Okay, it's not going to take that long. My concern, I have severe asthma, which has gotten worse because you just keep chopping down trees, which are the lungs of the earth, and there's really no air left. In the spring and the summer and the fall, you can literally taste the exhaust as you're breathing. And so if you're going to cut down the dozen or so trees that are on these two properties, even if you plant that many again, it'll take 60 years for them to be, to clean the air like they do now. And we need to breathe. And instead of chopping down more trees, could you just plant more, please?
Okay. I don't see any questions from the delegation. I'll just quickly comment on your points, and I appreciate that. And I think a tree canopy is absolutely important. This council, collectively, the last term of council, I think will probably have the future support of this new council as well, has already put forward action plan to set a high canopy target for the next 20 years and over the next 50 years as well. So having the right amount of tree canopy and preservation of trees is absolutely important, and I agree with you. And we're trying to make the necessary action plan towards that as well. That's with planting also.
Do existing properties, when they cut down a tree, have to replace it?
Well, that'll be done through the site plan process, where and the tree management plan that's a part of this application that's been submitted would outline the requirements of what type of horticulture tree planting requirements would be on the future development if it were to be supported and approved.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. All right, that takes us through all the delegations, unless the clerks has anyone else. That's not on my sheet. Okay, thank you very much. In that case, now we're open for questions of staff. If you want to key in, thank you. Councillor Ioannidis, go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Singh. I guess the question I want to ask is, because I know one of the delegates who had mentioned the arrangement of their living arrangements, and to me it doesn't sound like a legal home, it sounds like a rooming house to me, and it doesn't seem like it's conforming to the bylaw. So I just want to know what's the exact zoning for that property.
Through you, Madam Chair, the use and the arrangement of the living accommodations at 1265 Ottawa Street and the adjacent property is not something we reviewed as part of this development application, and I'm not aware of any bylaw enforcement complaints regarding the arrangement of those units.
Okay, because it does sort of sound unusual to be sharing bathrooms and stuff on a single-family home. Okay, I guess that's just one of my questions. I was just concerned about that.
Did you have another question? No. Okay. Councillor Duneau?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So what I'm gathering is the biggest issue is parking and the congestion and traffic, sorry. So have staff done a traffic impact study? Have they done an environmental study with regards to the removal of the trees? I quite often, people who have lived in a residential area for a number of years don't want change. I get that. But we are at a point in time where we don't want urban sprawl. Some people are against intensification, so what do we do for housing? And so, to me, the biggest concern would be the parking and the congestion on the side streets, and then as well as the environmental impact.
Sorry, thank you. Was that a comment or a question or? Okay, all right. And next we have Mayor Verbenwick.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all the delegations who came in. I guess my one question first.
I'm so sorry, because it came midway. I wasn't sure. Did you get the response or? So-
Okay, that's
Because I
fine.
came in, I wasn't
Back
sure.
Back to Councillor Deneau, and I'll
Yeah,
hold on.
like, okay, I guess that's how it's done. Maybe we don't get to ask questions anymore. Yes, you absolutely do. Sorry about that. I'll just key staff in. Go ahead when you're ready. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, the parking ratio that is being sought at 1.15 spaces per unit meets the new zoning bylaw. So currently, we have two zoning bylaws that are in effect. Bylaw 85-1, which was from 1985, and bylaw 2019-051, which was just from a few years ago in 2019. So the applicant is seeking to provide the amount of parking spaces that would be required in the new zoning bylaw, 1.15. So the reduction that is being sought is only from the old zoning bylaw, and we feel that those parking rates at 1.5 or 1.75 spaces per unit are out of date and are not in alignment with our goals of splitting the modal share of all trips between public transportation, active transportation, and private vehicle use.
I'm not sure that answers my question. Has there been a traffic impact study in around that area? Because as I indicated earlier, and as some of our delegates indicated, we live in a world where people have more than one car. We live in a world where we entertain more so at home than we have before. So 20 units, 19 spaces, one accessible space. What is the expectation where those people should park? Because what I hear is there's people coming across the street, parking on the side road, obviously interrupting the current residents who live on that street. And so how do we fix that? Because that is an issue. That will be an issue, and I'm sure this will, if this project goes ahead, this won't be the last time we hear about that issue in that specific area. So how do we fix it? And have we done an impact study as to in and out traffic? That's all.
Thank you. So through the chair, the subject site is located on Ottawa Street South, which is a regional road. So our transportation staff defers to regional transportation staff on the review of transportation impacts. The region did not request a transportation impact study, as that's typically requested in developments with 100 or more units. So with 20 or more units, the amount of AM and PM peak trips is low enough, in their opinion, to not require a traffic impact study. We did talk about the traffic counts at the neighborhood meeting. There's tens of thousands of cars that pass by this subject lands every day. And so even if each unit were to make several trips per day, it wouldn't make a big enough impact in the overall traffic on Ottawa Street to require any mitigative measures. But I do understand the frustration of residents in terms of overflow parking, and we always remind residents that on-street parking is not a long-term solution for residents, and that it's mostly for visitors, 3 hours at a time, and bylaw enforcement complaints can certainly resolve those issues if they're longstanding.
Okay, next up is Mayor Renwick.
Thanks, and I'll point out Councilor Dooney is trying to get in the queue, but for some reason it's not putting him in the queue, but just turning his mic on right away. So if you can add him to your list, please. So going back to, thanks to everyone for delegating, and I think we've heard a number of concerns, some being the planning related in terms of traffic and other concerns, and some related from a human perspective and the impact. I guess my question to staff is, in evaluating these, we obviously evaluate these applications in relation to the Planning Act, which is provincial legislation. In what way does that Planning Act allow us to evaluate the impact on existing residential people, such as some of the delegations we heard from, and the impact something like this has on them? Because I think it's important for folks to understand how we can or can't weigh that in this particular circumstance.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Through the chair, yes, the Planning Act and other provincial policies give the city the opportunity to create an official plan and a zoning bylaw amendment, or sorry, a zoning bylaw that contains standards to regulate development. So some of those are minimum yard setbacks. So for example, the side yard setback on this proposed development is required to be 3 meters, 10 feet. That's much larger than the 4 feet that would be required for a single dwelling, and that's being met here, so they're not asking for relief from that. Similarly, the rear yard setback would be something like 7.5 meters, and in this case, they're providing 25 meters. So the Planning Act and provincial policies can give us the tools to create regulations to avoid adverse impacts on neighboring properties, such as the building being built too close to the property lines, building heights, building densities, etc. And in the opinion of planning staff, this is consistent with those policies and within the realm of low-rise residential development currently permitted through our official plan.
Sorry, maybe I wasn't clear in my question. I'm specifically interested, in this particular circumstance, we're going to be impacting a number of residents who, are living there. The rents are affordable. They're on, various programs like ODSP, Ontario Works, and so on. They will be displaced, and this isn't unique to this development, but to what degree or not does the legislation allow staff to factor that into their consideration? Because I think it's important that we're clear and transparent on that in terms of when you review it.
Perhaps Mr. Stevenson can help to illuminate a little bit more of your concern question.
Thank you, Chair Singh. In response to the question and in response to hearing Ms. Wood's delegation, we know that infill housing is an appropriate way to redevelop and provide additional density within our built-up area, but we also know that there's people living in those units, and that increasing housing supply is part of the solution, but not the only solution. And that's why Kitchener will continue to work with all of our partners, not only on looking at development applications that look at increasing supply, but housing incentives, housing programs, catering to all housing for people in all stages of their life, people who need attainable housing, affordable housing. We know that the cost of housing has quickly outpaced many things like ODSP payments and other things that people in our community rely on. And we know that we have a lot of work to do. The regional official plan that was recently approved has policies for rental replacement. The region of Waterloo was a leader with condo conversion policies where they were prohibited, where vacancy rates were low, and that's something that will be carried forward. As part of Bill 23, the minister has indicated that the minister will be passing regulations on residential replacement, but it looks like it could be potentially restrictions or limits. We're not sure what those regulations are. We have not seen a draft of them. We know that the residential replacement policies in the regional official plan, if they stay in the plan, the regional plan, as approved by the minister, when the minister approves it, we will be implementing those through whether it's a bylaw or our own official plan. So it's work that we know has to be done as important. It's on the province's radar, and we're waiting for those regulations as a result of Bill 23 to see what our program potential bylaws or changes to our official plan could include.
If I can, Mr. Chair, just finish clarifying the response here, though. But just to be clear, in terms of the legislation as it exists today, we really don't have the tools to regulate based on the impact it's going to have on existing residents. That may or may not change, but based on the provincial legislation, we don't have those tools right now?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. It's the Landlord and Tenant Act procedure about eviction by a landlord. So it's something that we are not directly involved in, but where our team can assist. And Councillor Clancy mentioned it. If there are people who aren't aware of services, we can certainly bring awareness to different options, but we cannot regulate and we cannot impose conditions between a landlord and their tenant.
Okay, thank you. And I think that speaks to one of the fundamental issues that I think we're going to need to grapple with, and where there does need to potentially be changes from the provincial point of view to factor these things in, so that residents who are being impacted significantly can have a way of remedying it in a reasonable fashion.
Thank you, and thank you for that help in clarifying. It just helps to understand from the context of those being affected and the residents as well in that area. Councilor O'Dooney, I think your mic is on, so you can actively
Is it working?
turn it on and off yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to first say thank you to everyone that made a presentation today. I really do appreciate it. I was trying to note down some of the concerns that were coming up. We're in a, huge conflict with Bill 23 and so many things that are coming at us at this point in time as well, where there's not enough housing and we have to figure out where it goes, and it has to happen, and we have a timeline to make it happen. So I definitely understand from staff's perspective. Some of the things that I just wanted to ask staff around, number one, the higher fence issue, that was a concern that came up, and from what I understand, we're looking at 6 feet. Number one, can it go further than that? Number two, is there a possibility of potentially some sort of underground parking that goes beyond 20 units? Because if you have 20 houses or 20 units and an average, I don't have any data to back this up, 2 cars per home, that's about 40 cars that we're looking at potentially, excluding visitors coming to visit. So if we only have 23 or whatever the number is, where are the other 17 going to go over a period of time? And that is going to cause chaos in that area. So what can we do? What are the opportunities? What's a win-win in this situation for something like that as well? And we get to save the trees. Or replant the trees, I guess, if you're doing underground.
Go ahead, Mr. Schneider.
Thank you. So through the chair, the first question in terms of the fence, the minimum standard for a visual barrier is 1.8 meters in the bylaw right now, but the fence bylaw does permit rear yard fences to go up to 2.44 meters, which is 8 feet. And there have been discussions with the applicant about whether they would be willing to provide an 8-foot fence rather than 6 feet, and they are willing to. So if we want to proceed with that, we can do so. And, second question, in terms of the underground parking, typically developments of this scale use surface parking, and it's because of financial reasons. Underground parking is very expensive to build. It has to be appropriate for the site, and there has to be a large enough site for the turn movements. If a proposal were to be proposed here with underground parking, it would likely increase the amount of units. Developers are typically not providing 2 spaces per dwelling unit, and the reason is 2 cars per household might seem to make sense for the suburban context and the other housing types in the area, and that's single detached or semi-detached that have a driveway that are able to provide that parking. But for apartment style units, 1 or 1.15 spaces per unit is the standard. It is the city's new bylaw to require that amount, and 2 spaces per unit would be considered very high. So the unit type, in terms of these are 1 and 2 bedroom units, goes towards crafting the perceived demand of parking in that area. If they were larger 3 bedroom units, then perhaps they would be looking at providing more parking. But the 1.15 spaces, which aligns with our bylaw, planning staff feel is appropriate for these dwelling types.
Anything further?
Yeah, I think in addition to what I've said, thanks for your response. It seems we're going to be comfortable with bylaw getting called every single time, every day, next year or potentially when this is built, and we're fine with that. And I think we need to start thinking, yes, I understand the requirements and the standards and those things, but what do we do to mitigate those things long term? So perhaps with the conundrum that we're in now, not just for this, but with other buildings that are going to be coming up and conversations like this, what sort of adjustments do we need to make in the future? I think that's a conversation that we might need to have as a council, but that's besides the point for now.
Yep, it's just a comment. And then there'll be opportunity to provide some comments as well for overall context to the application. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. In the environmental report that the city provided, there are a series of questions. The applicant should further clarify, and then there are like 10 items. Have these been clarified?
That's right. Go ahead. Mr. Schneider, just keep your mic on. That's easier.
Okay. Sorry, through the chair, was that you were referring to a neighborhood written comment that was provided?
No. City of Kitchener comment form? Oh, is it a neighborhood? No, it looks like Guarang. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but it is a City of Kitchener email address.
Oh, sorry. So through the chair, you're referring to the sustainability statement comments?
Yeah, it just says environmental planning sustainability, City of Kitchener, yes.
Yes, so through the chair, the city requires a preliminary sustainability statement to be submitted at the zoning bylaw amendment stage, knowing that the applicant is just has a rough idea of what they're looking to build, and they haven't hired the right consultants yet for detailed design. And then we'll also require a more detailed sustainability statement based off of those comments and questions that our staff provided to be submitted at the site plan stage, because that's when they start to hire their electrical consultants and their civil engineers that can get more details for the sustainability statement.
Okay, so that won't come, we'll never see that again. The City Council will never see the outcome of
revised
those.
sustainability statement?
Yeah.
No, it won't come to council for approval.
Okay. My other question had to do with the displacement of residents, the evictions. Has staff spoken to the developer? Because we've had cases where developers will clearly say, yes, we've got other units where we can move people and keep the rent the same. Have you approached the developer about that, and what was the outcome?
Through the chair, I was made aware of the resident that spoke here at the initial circulation and spoke with the planning consultant for the applicant, but not directly with the owner. The planning consultant received that information and passed it on to the owner, but there wasn't any further dialogue.
So is that something that you're going to pursue, or somebody should be pursuing?
Through the chair, the comment was provided as advisory, and I don't think we have any tools in our legislative authority to do anything about it.
Okay. My other question had to do with the balcony. Well, I assume there are balconies at the back of the property?
Through the chair, the proposed rendering includes balconies at the rear, yes.
Okay, so how is that, I know you can shift the direction of balconies, and there are tools that developers can use to reduce the impact on surrounding properties. What's being proposed for this one?
Through the chair, we worked with the applicant on the design of the balconies to face the front on Ottawa Street and the rear, which has 25 meters between the building and the property line. We didn't want any balconies facing the side property where it's only 3 meters, and they'd be directly overlooking. So the distance and the parking area as a buffer is what's providing the privacy for the balconies.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Singh. Just a little bit of clarification. In the staff report, I see in the diagrams it's 23 parking spots. And I keep hearing 20 in one accessible parking spot. So what's the exact parking?
So through the chair, there is 23 spaces. Of those 23, 3 are visitor, and 1 is barrier-free, not visitor.
Okay. One of the other questions I heard from a few delegates, is how individuals will be coming and going in this development. And what I see in the site plan, well, the rough site plan, I see that a transport truck could go in and out of this. So I'm not sure why these residents are saying that cars need to back out.
Yes, through the chair, there are 5 parallel spaces that would be facing the back property line. But yeah, again, on the truck movement plan, you can see there's a turnaround area, and they would be able to leave Ottawa Street in a forward motion.
Okay, and the other question that I want to ask is, my understanding is Ottawa Street, is that not a BRT or whatever Ion Express route?
Through the chair, there is a I-Express route, but for Ion, no.
Okay. So, and then at the Sunrise Center, is there not a bus terminal?
There, through the chair, there is a mini bus, small terminal there, yes.
Okay. So in other words, this is pretty well close to a major transit service area as possible it could be.
Through the chair, staff's opinion is that it's well served by transit.
Okay. If, in the planning perspective and the situation where you see where this property is located, is it safe to assume that a more dense project could have been proposed if there was a couple more land acquisitions?
Well, through the chair, the property is zoned designated low-rise residential, so 3 stories would be the max without having to amend the official plan. But yeah, certainly with more land acquisition, an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment could be requested.
Okay, so in other words, if there could have been some justification for that, if let's say another developer came along and wanted to buy 3 houses or 4 houses and build a high-rise, they could basically justify barely any parking if they wanted to.
Perhaps Mr. Reedman can add a few more comments to your question.
Yeah, through the chair, the recently approved regional official plan identified Ottawa Street as a higher order transit corridor in the future, and that's near a possible location of a future transit station. So whether that's bus rapid transit or LRT is to be determined, but that is meant to be ultimately a future transit corridor, and it's right near that major intersection.
Okay, so the reality is this is a lot less development, a less dense site that really in the future what's coming is going to be a lot more intense. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions from the committee. As a chair, I have a few of my own. I'll just continue on with what Councillor Ioannidis was asking. Just for clarification, I think it's really helpful for, of course, us as committee members and new members of council as well, and for the public to understand how does staff come to a point of supporting this type of an application where, from outside perspective, you see it's a low-rise area, a residential area with low-rise homes, detached homes, and now that's being converted into a multi-dwelling. Although it's still low-rise, but still multi-units as opposed to single-family homes. Mr. Schneider, if you can outline, a little bit of a quick explanation about the official plan, how density is coordinated through the official plan, and how this meets it. I know the report did say it, but as a quick summary about the ROP, the regional official plan currently, that does address Ottawa Street as a transit corridor, and how density is coordinated along transit nodes and transit corridor. And as well as one of the questions that was raised by a delegation was saying, hey, it's our Res 2 under the proposed Crosby zoning, and you're converting it to a Res 5. Does a Res 2 and Res 5, are they within the same classification as a residential area? And as an increase in density, how much of an increase is it substantive within that same zoning class? So if you could just outline some of those, thank you.
Yes, thank you. So the current land use designation is low-rise residential, and that permits a range of different housing types and different densities, but all at 3 stories or less. So the Res 2 zone in the new zoning bylaw permits single detached and duplexes, and the Res 5 permits multiple dwellings with no cap on units, but again, everything has to be under 3 stories. So what was being proposed by the applicant is still within the low-rise residential designation in the official plan. And the floor space ratio that's being sought from 0.6 to 0.63 is within the limits of 0.6 to 0.75 that's set out in the official plan as an acceptable density. So the official plan does have policies that we as planners look at to contextualize certain properties and whether they would be appropriate for this type of development. And are they located in major nodes, major transit areas? Do they have existing amenities? What are the impacts going to be? Are you able to make turn movements? Are you able to provide parking on site? So planning staff will look at all of those overall policies in the low-rise residential zone to determine if this change is appropriate. But in terms of the land use designation, the classification, yes, it's still low-rise residential, and this proposed development is still considered to be a low-rise residential development.
So the applicant is in keeping of what the planning policies are, or are they going quite outside the envelope of what the density requirements, and of course the planning requirements of this site, and is guided by the official plan? How, are they superseding, or are they staying within the boundary?
Yes, so the density that's being proposed is still well within the density limits in the land use designation in the official plan, 0.75 being the maximum. The 0.63 is a slight increase from what the zone permits, but it's certainly well within the low-rise residential densities permitted.
With zoning matters and planning matters, does council have the last say? Or if this committee and then in corresponding council meeting, if this application were to be turned down, what are some of the steps that the applicant could take?
So the applicant has the opportunity to appeal any decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. This, not being an official plan designation, doesn't need approval from the region. So the city would make a decision, and then there'd be a 20-day appeal period.
So they could appeal it to the OLT, and then it would be out of our hands as to how the OLT would, okay.
That's correct.
The other question is, of course, others have raised it as well regarding privacy, and I think that is a very valid kind of objection put forward by the adjoining property owners or just the community at large in that area. So through the site plan, that would be something that's addressed, but could committee make that a requirement that it be an 8-foot fence as opposed to a 6-foot fence?
Yes, the ability to request a visual barrier of 2.44 meters can be written into the zoning bylaw.
And can we also confirm to ensure that any of the lighting for the parking lot in the back, that they not face or bleed into the adjoining properties? Can we get that acknowledgement from staff as well for the future site plan?
Yes, so the city currently has standards that prevent light trespass and require lighting to be dark sky compliant.
Okay. The last question I have is regarding transit, and I think Councillor Ioannidis raised it, Councillor Donnell raised it, that a transit impact study or traffic impact study was not required because it's a regional road. Because, of course, it's not necessarily the demand or the amount of increased vehicles coming to the site, it's more so of the turning radiuses, making left turns. Is that a continued concern, especially because of Valley View being across, and that way you have cars coming from the other side as well, making left and right turns, and then there's cars projected to make left and right turns from this development as well. Can the City of Kitchener, on their own accord, request a traffic impact assessment?
Okay, so in terms of the throat width there, which is the width of the driveway, the region did provide initial comments on the concept plan that it was too narrow, and the applicant has widened it to 7.6 meters, which is around 25 feet. So there was comments made earlier that it's a single lane, but it's not. It is a double lane. Vehicles can leave and other vehicles can enter at the same time simultaneously. So there is ample space to make both turning movements. But in terms of the city requiring a transportation impact study, it's not something we would require if the road is on a regional road. It's outside of our purview. And I don't think our transportation staff would advise it for a unit count this small.
Okay, all right. With others raise the same question, concern regarding the fencing height. If no one, okay, all right, Councillor. As a chair, I can't put forward a motion. I would have to step aside. So Councillor Davey has said that he will bring a motion addressing that the height limit of the fence be 8 feet. Are these queuing in for questions or comments? You have a motion, okay? Okay, Councillor Davey, you're keyed in first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to move staff's recommendation with the addendum that the fence be 2.44 meters.
Okay, and that's received. No seconders required. Mr. Stevenson, did you have a question? Would you comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair Singh. If you were to provide a motion to require the taller fence, I would suggest that your resolution also includes the wording that pursuant to Section 3417 of the Planning Act, as amended, further notice is not required to be given with respect to zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 22009 OES. That's because the bylaw that was attached to the report already received statutory advertisement, and we would be able to amend it on the fly today if your resolution includes that, and I can provide that wording to the clerk.
That's exactly what I heard Councillor Davey say. Yeah, word to word. Yeah. Councillor Chapman, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thank you. I'd like to call for a deferral until December 19th for staff to then return to the developer and ask if they are willing to come up with a plan for relocating the evicted residents. Because it sounds like at this point we have no response from that question that you posed to them.
That's your motion, deferral to the 19th of December to allow
staff to reapproach the developer with
and receive comments from the applicant as to what actions that they're going to take regarding the displaced occupants of those units.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Davey?
Yes, sorry, so, well, wait, two questions. So we're in committee now, so we would be ratifying it, ratifying this at the council meeting, and sorry, the deferral was to the council meeting? Okay, and I do have a question of staff, again, given the comments I heard back and followed by Mayor Rabinovich, is this something that, like, are we allowed to even ask for something like this?
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's something we can certainly follow up with the owner and the applicant again on and see if there's an answer. We could do that whether it's deferred or not, or whether council does resolve to direct us to do that. If that's information that you would like reported back, we're happy to do that by email before council next week.
Okay, sorry, before you queue, I guess my problem with the clarity is, I'll put it a different way. Is this something that we can refuse an application based on the response, whether it's yes or no, or is that a rationale for council to refuse an application?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I can't provide legal advice. One, it's open session. Two, I'm not a lawyer. So what I would say is that if council can give reasons for making recommendations, and those could be challenged by the Ontario Land Tribunal, typically the legislations are seen independently, and recourse that a tenant may have would be in the Landlord and Tenant Tribunal. And so that's where we would make sure that any affected resident had information on how their rights are afforded to them that way.
Okay, thank you.
What I'm hearing is, just as a summary from my perspective, is not necessarily no, but it allows for the conversation to direct the tenant to, they could take certain actions, or more importantly, we can also see exactly what type of measures that the proponent is willing to make, that they may ease the concerns of this committee, hearing the delegation raise that as an issue. Okay, Mayor Rabinovich.
Thank you. So I'm, in light of the fact that this isn't going to get approved until next week anyway, I'm comfortable in supporting the deferral, because I think it is an answer that we would benefit in having. If we are taking that additional week, the only other piece of information I'd like, and you may already have it, and we can get that clarity, or you may want to talk further to the region. But just in terms of some of the traffic concerns, well, I understand that this can't justify a traffic study. I do also know that when it comes to regional roads, there's high degrees of sensitivity around access to a regional road. There's already one access there, obviously, but the volume of that access is going to significantly change from what it is at present. And so it would be helpful to have any further comment from regional traffic, if there is any, we don't have it already, just on that particular issue to consider that.
And just further to that, do we have the flexibility to be able to, and as we ask for more clarity from the region, can staff also put forward their consideration, saying, hey, look, if you guys were willing to allow for a traffic review study, that would be welcomed by the committee and through the questions raised? Is that something that, and then leave it to their discretion? Go ahead.
Sorry, just for clarity, was that we would be asking the applicant to produce a transportation impact study?
Asking the region once more to assess, based on the comments received through the public meeting, the comments received through this meeting and the delegation, that a number of issues have been raised regarding traffic, accidents that may have happened, or possible concerns with turning radiuses, that a traffic review study would be welcomed, and would they be willing to make that as a requirement?
Yes, we can talk to the region transportation staff about that.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Councillor Ioannidis, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Singh. I too can support the deferral, and the reason why I can support the deferral is I know one of the delegates had asked the timing of this meeting, and I think with our council meeting, at least it's going to be an evening council meeting, that's so some of the residents who can't make it can come.
I agree, thank you. That's a good point. Councillor Davey?
Yeah, thank you. I'll support it as well, but I just wanted to put it out there. I'm a little bit concerned because this is something that we could conceivably ask of every single planning application ever. And again, my concern is that I really like having an idea where council is at committee. That's the purpose of having a committee. And then we have some sober second thoughts before it comes to council, and now we're in a situation where I don't know where any of my colleagues are in terms of supporting this or not. So I guess what I'm saying is, if this is going to be something that becomes common practice, then perhaps we need to add it to the process for applicants to be able to respond to it ahead of time.
Thank you. I appreciate those extra comments, and just out of fairness, I think it's welcome that you're raising that. I'll just quickly add a comment regarding the deferral. I think I'm so sorry. There almost needs to be a button, a loud one, where those that are joining the meeting through online, they can get the chair's attention. Go ahead, Councillor Mashur.
You'd almost think you could hear me say, Paul, Councillor.
And you know what, that may be helpful. I mean, we have meetings later on too. If you're being missed by the chair, just say, point of notice, okay. Point of order.
Okay, I just want to comment on this deferral. I am very happy that Councillor Chapman brought this forward, and I do understand what other councillors are speaking to, particularly Councillor Davey. But this is kind of, maybe this is precedent setting, and yeah, you're right. Going forward, maybe something will be available for should these things happen again. I hope we don't see very much of this. This is quite. It's alarming, and it shouldn't be, I guess, in the way the state of our homelessness and development and everything else, as fast as everything's moving. But I'm really happy that Deb has brought this forward.
Thank you. I don't see any other comments, so I'll just quickly make the comments of the deferral as well. I also think it's a prudent opportunity to allow conversation to take place. A lot of this is kind of out of our hands. Unfortunately, we are driven by prescribed planning policies and outlined already, density requirements and of course where and how development should proceed through the official plan, where we can take a position that's contrary to our existing policies and provincial policies, but that will only give false hope to the residents, because again, there's an avenue for them to challenge that and have a favorable decision, and something that may be out of our control further than more than even what was being asked for in the past. But again, with a deferral, having the applicant to answer back of how the tenants are being displaced is a very reasonable question. And I think it's more so not necessarily just an opportunity for a conversation, but encouraging them to take the necessary steps to make sure that they limit the impact and harm to the occupants that are in those units right now. The other thing is, of course, apart from the displacement issue, I think traffic is a concern. Having that 1 week conversation from our staff, hearing the delegation, hearing those concerns being echoed by the committee members should give enough, I think, credence for staff to be able to connect back with regional staff and say, hey, more questions are raised and we need to make sure that we're making a decision based on the appropriate information on hand. And if that's not there, perhaps that's an additional study that is absolutely merited. And I look forward to hearing what regional staff would have to say into next week. So with that, there's a deferral motion on the table, and that's by Councillor Chapman. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. So just a little bit of an explanation for those in attendance. So this is going to get deferred to council meeting next week Monday. It'll be after 7 o'clock. So others would have an opportunity to join and provide comments. I would really encourage, if you request your neighbors to come as well, to make sure that their comments are, further to what's been said in this committee. We don't want to rehash the same thing that's been heard. It's not really going to change much unless there's new information. And during council meeting, that would be the final decision, and that would be ratified the same day as well. So with that, we'll move on to the next item. Thank you to all those that attended and the delegations making your points forward as well. You know what, before we go, we should probably take just a 2-3 minute break, bio break, and then we can move on to the next item. Oh. Okay. Maybe you're right. Okay, all right then, on Councillor Davies' encouragement, we will carry on, and yeah, he's a taskmaster over here, so. 6.2, draft plan of condominium. This item may go pretty fast. There is a delegation, though, first, so from their staff in attendance for clarification, but delegations Pierre Chavon virtually. And this is for 3241-3247 King Street East and 108 Cameo Drive, draft plan of condominium for vacant land. Mr. Chavon, you're ready when you like. Go ahead.
Sorry about that.
Staff, was your presentation beforehand, or?
Yes, Chair. If possible, Mr. Snyder has a quick presentation he'd like to present.
Okay, all right. You mentioned here your attendance. Go ahead when you're ready.
Good afternoon. I'm here to speak to application 30 CDM 22217, which proposes a vacant land plan of condominium at 3241, 3247 King Street East and 108 Cameo Drive. On the next slide, I will briefly go over the site context. The lands are located on the south side of King Street East between Fairway Road South and Hofstadter Ave. The parcel is an irregular shaped lot that contains frontage onto King Street and Cameo Drive. The subject lands and surrounding lands are designated in the city's official plan and zoned in the city's zoning bylaw for high-rise development. The site plan is shown on the next slide. The applicant submitted a site plan application to the city in 2021 and has received approval in principle to construct a multiple dwelling development consisting of 3 residential towers. On the left-hand side is Tower A at 24 stories and fronting onto King Street East. In the middle is Tower B at 23 stories in height and connected to the 2.5-story parking structure with landscaped amenity deck on top. On the far right is Tower C at 19 stories and fronting onto Cameo Drive. In April of this year, the requested approval from the Committee of Adjustment for minor variances to the zoning bylaw for a parking reduction and relief from yard setbacks to facilitate this development was approved and is now in full force and effect. The reason for this application today is to request a draft approval of vacant land condominium. Vacant land condominium is a type of land tenure application in which parcels of land become either units or common elements in order to organize, structure, finance, or distribute different pieces of land in a proposed development. It is different than a standard condominium in which each of the dwelling units becomes its own separately owned unit. Instead, each of the 3 residential towers and the parking structure would be 1 unit each. Common elements would be the surface drive aisles, visitor parking spaces, and shared landscaped and amenity areas located at grade. The purpose for this application is to finance and phase construction of the 3-tower proposal. To wrap up, staff are recommending approval of the application to grant draft approval to the plan of vacant land condominium, subject to the conditions laid out in Attachment A. This application is intended to facilitate the phasing and financing of construction of this development. The proposed development conforms to provincial, regional, and city plans. It is compatible with surrounding land uses and represents good planning. As such, staff recommend that the draft plan of condominium be approved subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report.
All right. Thank you. And, sorry. As earlier, we all hold our questions to staff for later. Mr. Chavon, go ahead. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Thank you, Chair Singh, members of the committee. My name is Pierre Chauvin. I'm a partner at MHBC Planning. And here in support of the staff recommendation, just want to take this opportunity to thank your staff. As you've heard, we've been working with your staff for the better part of a year now on the site plan and the variances that have been approved. And as you've also heard this evening, this is simply a application for financing purposes to help finance the various phase construction of the 3 towers on site. And we support your staff recommendation and ask that committee do the same. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Schneider, go ahead.
I don't have a question or comment, just say at the appropriate time I'd like to move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions of the delegation. Mr. Chavon, thank you very much. In that case, we will. So there was a written submission by Donna Deemer that was circulated as well. Just want to bring the attention to the committee. All right, any questions of staff? Councillor Chapman, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I noticed in the report from Hydro One, they're saying that they don't support, does not approve the proposed condominium at this time, pending review and approval of the required information. So what have they, like, at what point stage do they sign off on it? I mean, I think it's an important component to this proposal, right?
Sorry, go ahead.
Through the chair, Hydro One provided the same comments at site plan, and it's incumbent upon the applicant to work with Hydro One to ensure that the construction won't affect the high voltage transmission lines that they've outlined on Cameo Drive. But their requirements are outside of the scope of what we would require for registration of a plan of condominium.
Okay, but staff at some point will follow up on this, or, I mean, at this stage, no, but...
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, if that's the case, then can I get a mover? Oh, moved by Councillor Schneider. Any comments? I see no requests for comments. I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. So we will move on to item number 6.3, which is the official plan amendment for 206-210 Duke Street and 46 and 50 Madison Avenue North. Committee, we have allocated 40 minutes for this item. And I'm not sure how long it's going to take, but I just want to advise the committee, I don't want to reduce anyone's capacity to ask questions or comments, just we want to make sure that we're succinct with what we want to say. It's just that we are already at 5 o'clock, and this part of the planning meeting was set to finish it by this time, and we're supposed to be in special council and then caucus afterwards. So we will carry forward. All right, Mr. Dumart, you will be presenting first from staff. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, members of the committee. Before you is a zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment application for the subject properties located at 206, 210 Duke Street East, and 46 and 50 Madison Avenue North, proposing an 8-story building with 100 residential units, 40 of which will be deeply affordable dwelling units. The subject lands are located at the intersection of Duke Street East and Madison Avenue North. The proposed development includes consolidating 3 properties that are currently vacant. The surrounding neighborhood consists of single detached dwellings, multiple dwellings including low-rise, medium-rise, and high-rise developments, as well as commercial and institutional buildings exist in the surrounding area. The Ion Kitchener Market Station stop is located approximately 250 meters of subject lands. Existing bus routes operate along Weaver Street and King Street East, and the lands are in close proximity to the downtown cycling grid. The subject lands are located in a major transit station area in the urban structure of the City of Kitchener's official plan. As I mentioned in my previous slide, the station stop of the Kitchener Market LRT station is within 250 meters, which is about a 2-minute walk from the station stop from the subject lands. So the planned function of major transit station areas is to provide density and developments that will support transit and rapid transit with a mix of residential, office, institutional, commercial developments. This proposed development represents intensification that will help the city achieve these density targets in the MTSA, which require 160 people and jobs per hectare. Under current planning framework, the subject lands are designated medium-density multiple residential in the 1994 King Street East Neighborhood Secondary Plan. The existing land use designation permits multiple dwellings with a floor space ratio up to 2 and building heights up to 8 stories. The medium-density multiple residential designation applies to the subject lands along with the abutting and surrounding properties. So it's always been the intent and the intended planned vision for this block of Duke and Madison that it would be developed with a medium-density 8-story residential developments. To facilitate the proposed 8-story residential affordable housing development, the owner is proposing to change the official plan designation from medium-density multiple residential to medium-density multi-residential with special policy 8 in the City of Kitchener's King Street East secondary plan. So special policy 8 will then allow for a floor space ratio up to 3.6. And to implement special policy 8, the applicant is proposing to change the zoning from residential 7 zone with special use provision 480U and special regulation provision 755R and zoning bylaw 51 to residential 7 zone with a modified special regulation provision 755R and holding provision 95H. So special regulation 755R will regulate parking at a rate of 0.2 spaces per unit. It will require 0.5 indoor secured bicycle spaces per unit, 20% of which will be required to be EV ready. It will allow for an increased floor space ratio of 3.6 and permit a reduced rear yard setback of 5 meters. Holding provision 95H will then require an updated noise study, which will be removed once the region has received and approved the updated noise study. So before you is the concept site plan for the proposed 8-story affordable housing development, showing the building oriented along Duke Street and Madison Avenue. The proposed development consists of 100 residential units, including 18 bachelor studio units, 54 one-bedroom units, and 28 two-bedroom units, with parking spaces located internal to the building, on the surface, and underground. All of these 100 dwelling units are purpose-built rentals. 60 units will be offered at market rate, and 40 will be deeply affordable dwelling units. So for this development, the deeply affordable unit rents will range from $570 per month for bachelor units to $875 per month for two-bedroom units. The applicant had initially intended to offer all the units as deeply affordable. However, they recently informed staff, due to rising construction material and labor cost, 100 affordable units wasn't viable, and rather now they're proposing 40 deeply affordable units and 60 units at market rate. So before you is the building rendering of the proposed development, showing the building frontage along Madison Avenue. Building stepbacks are incorporated on the 6th floor. Visual barriers and landscape buffers will be provided along all side yards, which will screen parking to adjacent properties. On-site amenity is proposed at grade along Madison Avenue, and on-site rooftop amenity spaces are proposed on the 6th floor. So this development represents an opportunity. We have an opportunity here to increase development of missing middle housing and a major transit station area. This development will contribute to meeting the city's intensification target for the Kitchener Market Station major transit station area of 160 people and jobs per hectare, which it currently does not meet the minimum target of 160, as only 61 people and jobs per hectare exist for this major transit station area. This development creates an opportunity for 100 purpose-built rental units, again, 40 of which will be deeply affordable. It presents an opportunity to redevelop an underutilized parcel of land with a new compatible development that aligns with the official plan. The development will diversify housing stock and provide additional housing choices in the community and introduce compatible built form into the neighborhood. In conclusion, staff are supportive of the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. The proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment are consistent with policies of the provincial policy statement, conform to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the regional official plan, City of Kitchener official plan, represent good planning and are in public interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dumart. So we have Kate Wills from MHPC Planning, and I believe, Kate, you are representing the applicant. Go ahead when you're ready. You have 5 minutes to make your delegation. Thank you. Your mic is off, Kate.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I'll try it again.
Please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of council. My name is Kate Wills, and I'm an associate from MHPC Planning, representing the applicant, Nossas Housing Corporation, of the region of Waterloo, through the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications for 46 and 50 Madison Avenue South and, Duke Street as well. I'm here in support of the staff recommendation. I'm presenting to you virtually today. However, the following representative from our project team are in the council chambers with you. Mr. Katsopoulos, the president of Nossas Housing Corporation of the region of Waterloo, and Mr. George Cortez Sr. and George Cortez Jr., who are the project architects. I would like to thank Mr. Craig Dumart for your detailed presentation, and I'll do my best not to repeat the information that he has presented today. I can't see my slides on the screen. Can you guys see them?
Not yet. We'll see if the clerk can. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
They are now showing.
Okay, perfect. So next slide, please. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Before you is a context plan identifying the subject property in red and the 400 and 800 meter radius, which provides for typical walking distances within 5 to 10 minutes from the property. The site is well located and just outside the edge of the urban growth center of downtown Kitchener, within a short walking distance to King and Weaver Street, and those streets provide GRT access. And just 1 block further to the south is the Kitchener Market Ion Station, shown on your screen there, the blue dashed line, and you can see the Ion as well. The site is less than a block away from the Kitchener Market and public parking, and with close proximity to Kaufman Park, Sandhills Park, and Shepherd Public School. Next slide, please. Just quickly, this slide represents the regional endorsed major transit station area for the market station area. So the Kitchener Market Ion stop is the yellow dot on Charles Street, and the subject property is shown with the orange star. Next slide, please. Just to provide a summary of what's being proposed, the total number of residential units is 100. There are 40 planned as affordable housing units, and 33% of the units are planned as fully accessible. In terms of a unit breakdown, we're providing 18 bachelor units, 54 one-bedroom units, 28 two-bedroom units, and the units will range in size from 445 square feet to 810 square feet in size. We're proposing a floor space ratio of 3.6 and currently showing 51 parking spaces, which is at 0.51 spaces per unit, 40 of which are underground and 11 shown at the surface. We've provided sufficient bicycle parking. Class A, there's 50 spaces and 6 Class B spaces. And we have amenity spaces located at grade and on the rooftop, as Craig has previously described. In terms of affordable housing, Knossos Housing Corporation of the region of Waterloo is a not-for-profit company that has been operating for the last 35 years, both locally and in other municipalities. This project is funded through the CMHC co-investment funding program. Knossos Housing Corporation has also raised a substantial amount of money to help fund the construction of the building. The 40 affordable housing units are planned at 80% of the current market rates defined by the CMHC. The program requires 20% of the units to be accessible, and we're exceeding that by providing 33%. The applicant has also applied for the Regional Affordable Housing Program and are waiting to confirm if they are successful. This could increase the number of affordable units that we're providing in this building today. The anticipated construction for this project is planned to commence in April 2023, pending approval of the OPA, ZBA, and site plan applications. Next slide, please. I'll just quickly go through this slide. As Craig mentioned earlier in the presentation, we're seeking an OPA to increase the FSR to 3.6 and a zoning bylaw amendment for special regulations related to the increase in the FSR, the reduction in parking ratio, and the setback from the rear yard, which is the north property line at 5 meters. So there's access provided off Madison Avenue and Duke Street. The access from Duke Street goes to the underground parking and Madison Avenue to the surface level parking. I'm just going to quickly skim through this so I'm not holding you up. Common outdoor amenity space is provided at grade along the Duke Street frontage and also adjacent to the building on the east side in that large green patch there. And then there's some covered common amenity space as well, and as I mentioned before, contemplated on the rooftop. Since our neighborhood meeting that we held previously, minor changes have been made to the site plan, which include removing some of the surface parking and creating that common amenity space along the Madison Avenue frontage, and increasing the setback from the north property line from 4.5 meters to 5 meters. Next slide, please. Craig has gone through a number of these already, so I'd just like to show the different views that were rendered by the architect. So this is the southeast view, showing the main entrance to the building along Duke Street. Next slide, please. This is another view, standing at the corner by the market, looking down Duke Street. You can see the underground parking going down, and access is provided at grade that is accessible to all. Next slide, please. And again, a version of the rendering from the front. You can see the access at grade and parking going underneath the building. Next slide, please. And then this is a view from the Madison Street frontage with an additional access for people who park at surface and visitors to the building as well. Next slide, please. Craig has already outlined this. We're just seeking an official plan amendment to increase the floor space ratio to 3.6, which would allow for a total number of 455 units per hectare on site. Next slide, please. Working with staff, we've come up with the following site-specific zoning amendment requests, which include a maximum FSR of 3.6 to provide a parking ratio of 0.18 per unit plus 0.02 for visitor parking, so that would give you 0.2 per unit. We have provided more spaces but this will allow for versatility through the site plan process to potentially add more units, or in the future, if there's more demand and our client is able to include these units in a future development application. Next slide, please. And there will be a holding provision plan for the site. If approved today, because of a stationary noise study is being submitted and will be reviewed and approved by the region at a later date. Next slide, please. To conclude, the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the policy framework of the growth plan and the Greater Golden Horseshoe. It conforms to the policy of the Region of Waterloo's official plan and provides for intensification within a major transit station area. It implements the vision and objectives of the draft King Street East secondary plan. It represents the intent of the Kitchener official plan and zoning bylaw, and makes use of available infrastructure and provides an additional 40 affordable housing units to our community. And that concludes my presentation today. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I will see if there's any questions from the committee. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering, Ms. Wills, how long has the property owner owned the property for?
I'm assuming through you, Mr. Chair, I'm assuming that the owners have acquired the property within the last couple of years. I know there was a previous zoning amendment application that had gone through for this site, but it was under separate ownership at the time.
Okay.
Unrelated to our client.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the setbacks from the houses that are along Duke and Madison they seem to be, maybe it's just the images that you provided, but they seem to be like right there.
Yep, through you, Mr. Chair, the setbacks provided along the Duke Street side do meet the setback requirements. We're not asking for any special provisions. If you're looking at the image, you may see the balconies that are projecting into the side yard, and those balconies are projected at that distance shown on the plan. The only reduction that we're asking for in terms of the setback, which would be the rear yard, which is technically the side on the Madison Street side, is just 5 meters, where I think 6 is the requirement. 7.5 is the requirement. So we had a neighborhood meeting, and we heard from the neighbors and received comments, and we have increased that setback to 5 meters.
Okay, and are they single dwelling homes all around your proposed build?
Generally, they are single detached around the building itself. To the northeast is, I believe, a 6-story apartment dwelling as well. So there are medium rise residential dwelling units in this city block.
Okay, one last question. I mean, I think it's a great proposal. I should say that. Can you describe the indoor and outdoor amenity spaces?
Sure, I can. Through you, Mr. Chair. Those amenity spaces will be detailed during the site plan process by a landscape architect. We haven't applied for a site plan at this point in time, but I would imagine the ones at grade would be passive, providing some benches, areas for people to gather. There is a covered amenity space on the northwest side of the building that you may be able to see. It's kind of on an angle there, so there would be some covered shaded areas for the residents to use during the different seasons. And then a rooftop patio, which will also include some passive type of uses, which could include potentially a barbecue, some seating, and some landscaping to cool off the heat island effect up there.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Clancy.
Just 2 points. Like, I am excited. I know that there's been an eagerness in the neighborhood to see this lot become used well. So I'm glad for that. I'm glad to hear about the addition of more affordable units in the downtown core. I guess I'd hope that if I can just urge our planning staff to continue the conversations with you guys about recouping some of those affordable units. It was disappointing to hear about the 60% reduction, so I'm not sure. I know that that's, a work in progress. There's lots of factors, so just as a representative from Ward 10, that we could keep that conversation going to see how we can increase the number of affordable units. And I just wanted to, and this is maybe something that we could hear back about later on, is I know this part of town is lacking a lot of green space, and it's probably top of the list of areas that need an investment in parkland. So I don't know if that's something where two departments can talk with each other to kind of expedite a bit more action on parkland in that vicinity. Can staff comment on those, on that specific concern about parkland in this area?
So we will have an opportunity to ask questions of staff later, which is fine.
This
But
is just
if you have
for
any,
the developer.
Jermaine, to the delegation. No? Okay, all right, no worries. And I don't see anyone else. Thank you. All right, so we'll go on to our other delegations. Next up I have Kyle, I think it's Verge. Welcome, Kyle. And we appreciate your patience. I know you've been here for a while.
No problem, thank you.
Yeah, you have 5 minutes.
My name is Kyle Urich. I live at 287 Duke Street East. I'm not here to oppose this, by the way. Fundamentally, I have no issues with it, but I do have a couple of concerns, things that myself and my neighbors talk about quite a bit as it relates to this development. So for your consideration, imagine, if you will, you lived on a street where there was going to be a major development. You lived 11 doors down from that major development. There were already 3 major developments ongoing in your neighborhood. And within 100 paces of your front door, there were 3 giant holes for future developments that theoretically will be happening at some point in the future. Imagine the impact it has on that neighborhood. Imagine, if you would, that one of those developments, they broke ground on that in May of 2017. They are currently, by our estimation, 40% of the way through that project, which means it will be a 9 or 10-year project. Imagine, if you would, that every day on your street, which is a one-way street with a contraflow bicycle lane, with a large section where no parking is allowed at all, that just so happens to be in front of this particular proposed development, imagine, if you would, that the workers at the very large 5-year and 7 months into it development, probably 9 to 10 years before they're done, every day at approximately 4:30, they leave the construction site. They have been parked on the side streets in contravention of bylaws all day long, and no amount of calls to bylaw enforcement will fix this problem. Imagine, if you would, they come to their trucks after their shift, and they seem to have a competition who can use the F word the most times before they all smoke a joint, get in their vehicles, and have another competition to see who will leave the longest tire track mark as they spin away. And this is repeated day in, day out for 5 years and 7 months, and probably for 9 years. Imagine, if you would, this development is going on near a facility that repairs automobiles. And the one cross street, Madison Avenue, that would be able to accommodate additional vehicles, be they constructors or once the building is finished, tenants or visitors, that one street, half of the parking is already taken up by that vehicle repair facility. Can you imagine the impact that these developments have on the neighborhood? Can you imagine our concerns about parking? Can you imagine our concerns about vehicles driving the wrong way down the street, a one-way street, all day, every day, in complete defiance of the laws? Can you imagine the fact that there will be vehicles parked willy-nilly everywhere in this neighborhood? And so my concern and the concern of my neighbors is twofold. Number one, will this be another 9-year project? And number two, 100 units, 51 parking spaces, and really, you can't park on Weber, you can't park on Duke, maybe a couple of spots on Madison, but not many. Where will extra cars go? Those are my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't see any questions from the committee. Thank you for making the time to come here. We appreciate it. Next is Donna Smith. Okay, thank you very much. All right, so does the committee have any questions of staff? Mayor Vivenwit.
So I do have a question of staff pertaining to the concerns expressed by the last delegation. And I'm wondering if we can have a bit of an understanding of what the mechanisms are in place to, A, deal with the kinds of concerns that are talked about. What tools do we have in terms of some of the requirements that we have of builders, construction/developers? Because, I mean, this isn't the first time, quite frankly, that we've heard of this issue. And is it something that we need to put into our, quite frankly, into our site plan agreements or something in order to ensure that these issues are being appropriately addressed?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly the matters relating to construction phasing and parking is something that last year we have required a parking plan for construction staging and construction vehicle parking and then construction worker parking as part of our site plan approval process. So the on-street parking of workers all day has occurred in other neighborhoods as well. So we have a condition now for new applications that we apply. So we see a construction phasing plan, we see a parking plan for during construction, and then we approve that prior to issuing the building permit so that we have a good understanding of how the demands will be mitigated in terms of parking requirements. Matters related to dangerous driving or driving under the influence, I think maybe Craig can connect with that owner offline and determine what's going on. That would be a matter for the Waterloo Region Police, but we can certainly make that connection.
Thanks. But just in terms of the issue of putting this in new site plans, if the constructor then is not meeting those obligations, what remedies do we have? Notwithstanding that, we do have some different challenges with existing site plans, I think, as we heard about today.
Yes, through the chair. So I didn't answer your full question. The second part is we then require them to maintain that throughout the life of the construction. We put that in the development agreement. So then there would be contravention to their development agreement, which means that we have a recourse, either revoking the building permit, issuing a stop work order, or litigating against the developer. So the reason we put it into the site plan approval process is so that we can get it up front, and then we put it into the agreement so that we can enforce it. So certainly I'm fairly confident I know which site this gentleman was speaking about, and we'll see if we can address that matter. But moving forward, we do have a mechanism in place to prevent this.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. I noticed that there was a reduction, as has been noted, of affordable housing units from 100 to 40. Is there a chance that it would be reduced even further? Like what control do we have over that? Or how can we have some reassurance from staff that it won't be reduced further?
Just keep your mic on for now.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, the applicant is an affordable housing provider. It's part of their business model to provide affordable dwelling units. They have applied to the region for funding. They have CMUC funding. They have Infrastructure Canada funding. And as part of that, they're audited essentially to ensure that the rents that they are providing are in fact affordable. So there is that mechanism. But in terms of the actual bylaw itself and the official plan amendment, it doesn't actually specifically regulate the unit tenure or the rents. Rather more so that's dealt with through separate agreements by the region, CMUC, or Infrastructure Ontario.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Singh. I'm just want to get a better understanding with this parking, because to me, if this was happening every single day, these individuals, I would assume, would be getting tickets every single day. So I'm not understanding can we get, like, before, I guess, next meeting, what like a report on what the complaints were for the neighborhood? Because I'm a little concerned that there's seems to be a lack of response, but I don't find that we would have been doing that, because that seems really odd to me.
Mr. May.
Through you, Mr. Chair, my apologies, I had stepped out of the room, but my understanding is that there are some issues raised around the Duke and Madison area. I can certainly pull the numbers and provide an email to council prior to council in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that would be helpful, because many of those are concerns outside of the development itself, so thank you. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to piggyback onto Kyle's question, so there's a development in that area that's been going on for quite a while, and so what can we do as city or staff do to, say, accelerate projects? But if I were a resident of that area, I'd be quite concerned as well, considering there's been a project on for 4 years, and then there's a potential one to start, let's say, the next year or two, and maybe that other project's not done. So, what can we do to speed up the process, or if there's anything we can do? I'm just curious.
Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So once the building permit is issued, if the construction sits idle for multiple months, then there is an ability for the chief building official to revoke a permit or to follow up. We know, and we've heard from the development industry, that the last 2 years have been fairly difficult to develop. There are labor issues, there was strikes, there was carpenter union strikes, and supply issues. So I do understand the concern. This has been across the city, and the construction industry, it's been challenging the last couple of years. We're starting to see that come back, and we're seeing more availability of products, and the industry is telling us that they're able to get labor and things are better than they were. But certainly with large volumes of construction, a lot of change in our city, we can do what we can in order to ensure that development doesn't have negative impacts. But I understand the comment, and there are some challenges to it.
All right, I don't see any other. I'm looking for Councillor Michaud just in case I'm missing her again, but I'm not. Councillor Clancy, go ahead.
I just wanted to follow up with the concern about lack of green space in that particular part of Kitchener. Can I ask staff for a comment on the plan going forward, or if we could get some updates on the plan to increase green space in this area?
Ms. McGoldrick. Before you get to that, just because it's going to be a long night later on as well, and this is not just to you, this is for everyone else altogether. We really have to try to stay germane to our questions to the application. Like if you want to ask a question regarding is the development providing enough green space, I think that's absolutely, and I think planning staff should address that. But this is a really, I think, lengthy answer, because there's a lot of context to this that should probably be discussed in another meeting. But I obviously would like you to answer quickly, though. But more so, again, I know I'm not trying to pick on you. It's for everyone else, because of the length of the day, and there's quite a few other items that's still pending. We really got to stick to the application and specifics of the application itself. Thank you.
Okay, through the chair, I'll provide a quick response in that staff brought forward a parkland dedication bylaw and associated strategy in August. In the recommendations associated with that report, it was to identify an acquisition strategy for areas of the city that are deficient in parkland, and certainly, as you mentioned, this area of the city does have less parkland and would be part of that acquisition strategy. With Bill 23, we are going to need to reevaluate what opportunities are presented to us as it relates to parkland acquisition and the impacts of the changes on our ability to do so. So the intent is to look at acquisition of parkland in deficient areas, with the impacts of the ability to collect cash in lieu for these types of developments. We'll need to chart that path forward in this next year.
Anything of staff? Perfect. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Davey. I haven't heard anyone move it or move the recommendation. I'm prepared to move the recommendation and have some comments.
Perfect. Councillor Johnston, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't know if you needed a seconder for that, Councillor Singh, or Chair Singh.
So I didn't catch that. Say again. Oh, you want to second it?
Yes.
Yeah. We don't need seconds in committees, but I take your second anyways. All right. I'll open it up for comments if you can key in, please. I don't see anyone. Councillor Ioannidis, you're moving it, so please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Singh. Yeah, first of all, I want to thank the property owners, Knossos Corporation, for providing affordable housing in our community. I mean, it's a great area, and really appreciate the support that you are offering in our community. And I want to extend my thanks to you. And also, really appreciate that we're looking at affordable housing in general, and it's in a desperate need of affordable housing. So anytime a project like this that comes up, I am more than happy to support this. In fact, I love seeing this, and the fact that the region is pitched in and given funding really shows the commitment to the organization in providing affordable housing. And I think this is a really great win. And one last thing, looking at the design of the property, I think it's a fabulous design. I think it looks phenomenal, and it's going to be a great addition.
Great, thank you so much. And I don't see anyone else. In that case, it's been moved. I will call the vote. All those in favor and opposed, and that's carried unanimously as well. Thank you very much, and thank you to the delegations as well as, of course, the staff for this file. Now, the last item for this part of the meeting is the Kitchener Growth Management Strategy. We are already well past a half hour. Perhaps I'll look to staff. It may be advisable that we take this into the part 2 of the meeting. The only issue, the thing is, Madam Clerks, are there any delegations registered outside of what's in here? Okay, so we have a written submission, so it's perhaps easy enough for us to defer, but I'll look to staff and see if they have any concerns with that. I know Mr. Daniani's been patiently waiting. Unfortunately, we may have to make you wait a little longer, so my apologies. Oh, go ahead.
Through you, Chair, staff have indicated they're happy to do a presentation in 5 minutes or less. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of questions around the horseshoe. That certainly would add the time to it. We're also amendable to bringing this item at 7 p.m. as well. So we're in your hands.
Okay, why don't we do a 5-minute presentation? If I see questions, in that case, then we will have to just reconvene back again in part 2. Tim, you have to key in whenever you're ready. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, sorry. No, it's not you. Okay. Hello, go ahead.
Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Gaurang Khandelwal, and I'm a policy planner with the city. So municipalities in Ontario are charged with ensuring that they direct proper and orderly development within their jurisdictions in accordance with provincial legislation. One of the ways that the city utilizes to achieve this is through the Kitchener Growth Management Strategy. So Kitchener's Growth Management Strategy provides a long-term framework for planning where and how future residential and employment growth should occur in Kitchener. It introduces an ongoing growth management program that allows us to adjust and evolve our planning framework as other regional and city projects develop and circumstances change. The goals and actions of the Kitchener Growth Management Strategy support the province's growth plan and the regional growth management strategy. The Growth Monitoring Report is an action item of the Kitchener Growth Management Strategy and presents a summary of some of the key quantitative metrics around intensification, density targets, and housing supply. This year's Growth Management Report was prepared by Tim Donagany and myself. I will be presenting some of the key findings from the 2022 Growth Monitoring Report, following which both Tim and I will be available to answer any questions as needed. So the chart on the left side of this slide illustrates trends in the number of building permits issued for new residential units in the last 20 years. In 2021, a total of 3,036 building permits were issued, which was less than that compared to 2020 and 2019, but still the third highest number of permits issued on record in a given year. Although the majority of new residential units were created were in the form of multiple dwellings, this proportion has reduced to 63% compared to 66% in 2020 and 75% in 2021. The pie chart on the right side of this slide illustrates a further breakdown of the multiple dwelling unit type created in 2021. 33% of the multiple dwelling units created in 2021 were within 4 tall buildings, whereas 67% of the multiple dwelling units were either additions to existing buildings or in the form of low to mid-rise buildings. The map on this slide shows where the new residential units have been created within Kitchener between June 16, 2021 and June 15, 2022. Graph on the top right shows the new residential units by type in the built-up area and the designated greenfield area. Building permits issued for new residential units between June 2021 and June 2022 within the designated greenfield area continue to provide a varied and balanced supply of dwelling units. The number of multiple dwelling building permits issued in the built-up area exceed those that were issued within the designated greenfield area. This is expected as higher density multiple dwellings are generally focused within intensification areas. The pie chart at the bottom right of the slide illustrates the percentage of units created within the built-up area in the designated greenfield area. The percentage of new residential construction that occurs within the built-up area is referred to as intensification level, and in 2021, the intensification level in Kitchener was at 51%. Currently, the region-wide minimum intensification target is 45%. This intensification level target is subject to change through the regional adopted official plan, which sets a minimum intensification target of 60% for Kitchener. Figure on this slide illustrates historic intensification levels and the 5-year and 10-year average intensification levels. A multi-year average of intensification provides a better understanding of whether the city is on track to achieving the required intensification level targets. This is because the timing of 2 to 3 multiple dwelling developments or 2 to 3 greenfield developments can affect the intensification rates in any given year. The 5-year average intensification level for the city is at 59%, while the 10-year average is at 54%. This shows that the city continues to be on track to contribute towards the region-wide intensification target. The table on this slide provides a snapshot of existing measures for current intensification areas in the city. Kitchener has observed increase in density within our strategic growth areas, but I'd like to briefly touch upon Kitchener's urban growth center. The estimated density of the urban growth center is at 218 residents and jobs per hectare. Kitchener has already achieved the provincial and regional target of 200 residents and jobs per hectare for the urban growth center, and is on its way of achieving the city's official plan target for urban growth center set at 225 residents and jobs per hectare by 2031. So I shared some of the key quantitative findings from the report. The rates of intensification density targets and understanding supply are all good indicators of planning objectives that we are trying to achieve. We are on our way to meet the minimum intensification targets and also have the potential to accommodate the current allocated growth within the urban area. It's important to note, however, that the targets both in the city official plan and regional official plan are minimums and not maximums. Minimum densities are used as minimum target and are a benchmark that we have to report back on, and are not a measure of a thriving and vibrant community. We know that great communities and neighborhoods are not simply created by meeting minimum targets, and there is a whole lot that goes beyond just the numbers. And crucial in our planning work is planning for complete and vibrant communities with a range and mix of housing types, density, and a mix of uses that drives transit, supportive, and walkable communities. Growth and intensification areas generally throughout the built-up area and in planned communities provides opportunities to create and continue to provide complete walkable 15-minute neighborhoods. As we progress on these intensification and density targets, we can also advance our climate and affordability objectives. So this was the 13th edition of the annual growth monitoring report, and it has remained largely unchanged since the first version. Staff is working towards updating Kitchener's growth management framework to reflect recent changes and updates to legislation. And as we work towards updating the growth management framework, we intend to bring in some additional data to report and monitor that will help us in strategizing where and how future residential and employment growth should occur in Kitchener. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I don't see, I'll see you guys at 7 o'clock. There's questions. So we will reconvene back after 7. Yeah.
Leave yet because we need to transfer from planning into back into special council right now.
Yeah, no problem. No, I was just saying rather than proceeding forward, it's better we just re-adjourn with this item into part 2.
Yep.
Okay. And Madam Clerk, for the item that was registered for 6:30, just in case I don't see anything, but if there's a delegation, if they can be communicated, that we're going to be having a late start time. Okay, thank you so much.
Excuse me, Chair Singh, if you can hear me. I didn't hear when you said we were coming back. If you did, or...
And saying at least 7 o'clock. Hopefully we can finish everything up before 7 o'clock. So it will be getting into special council now. Did you have any concerns or issues with that?
No, I just wanted to make sure that I was going to be in the right meeting and that we're using that other link now then.
Yeah, is there another link or? That's a good point, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So it'll be in the meeting link for caucus. Councillor Johnson and Michaud. Councillor Chapman, did you have anything pertinent to know or? Okay. All right then, okay, after you. You want to come in? Easier? Okay.
Thanks. Whoops. Oh well. You're bringing some stuff forward from finance. Sorry? Oh. Can someone send them a note, please? Councillor Johnson, and, because I left my phone over there. Just Councillor Johnson and Councillor Michaud, can someone send them a text? Councillor Ioduni's here, so that's good. Don't leave.
Dana, that would be the planning link, right? So the planning link, not special council link.
Someone texting me?
Whoever's texting. Yeah.
Okay. No worries. get going. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of our special council meeting. We'll now deal with item 7.1, Center in the Square Board appointments, and there's a motion and a report there. If we can have someone move it, please. Councillor Schneider, Councillor Davey, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Councillor Davey, if I can ask you to bring forward 7.2, pre-approval of the 2023 capital projects.
Yes, actually, to save time, how about I bring forward all of them?
Okay.
And seconded by Councillor Ennis, and that would be the pre-approval of capital projects, all of the user fees, save and accept, planning, and 2 engineering that are new, the water utility rates, and the natural gas rates.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Councillor Chapman, is that just, you're clicked in from before? Okay, thanks. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Motion to go in camera for the listed items pertaining to land acquisition and disposition, 2 items of solicitor-client privilege, and 1 pertaining to security of property. Do I have a mover? Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Michaud. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Motion to recess. Councillor Clancy, seconded by Councillor Deneau. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And we will be back just before part 2 of the planning meeting to finish the special council meeting. Thank you.
Are we leaving here? Going into another one now?
Yes, I left too soon before, but yes.
I don't want to go out. Yeah, I did too.
Okay.
Diane, are we leaving and going into another one now?
Yes, please. We're going to leave this link and go to the special council, the caucus link in the back room.
All right. Thank you.
Okay?